Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here with this card review for all of the class cards of the new mini-set Audiopocalypse, which as of recording this video is coming out in like 16 hours, actually 15 hours, something like that. As of this being on YouTube, it's probably coming out in like 12 hours or something. So let's just get right into it. And they have also announced the rotation will still be standard, so basically nothing is changing in Arena except these new cards are being added. There are 38 total, 33 class cards, and 5 neutral cards. I've already revealed the neutral cards. Those were on YouTube a few days ago. Of course, I'll probably link that in the description unless I completely forget. But in any case, we are also here with Twitch, so Twitch can say, hello YouTube. Hopefully I have the thing up. I think I do. But in any case, yeah, let's just get right into it. We're going to go all the way down the list. Since there's a lot of dual class cards, they won't be showing up twice. They'll be showing up under the first class, I believe, alphabetically for whichever the two classes are. So I'll try to point out when they are dual class what the dual classes are for. But in any case, we're just going to go right down the list alphabetically for that. So with that, let's get right into it. So the first card we have here is Cold Feet. This is a dual class card for Death Knight and Paladin. It's a frost spell. 2 mana, enemy minions cost 5 more next turn. So this is a card where honestly I think it would have been a lot better a year ago, because you know it used to be that with how many neutrals there were, and just in general there were just a whole ton of minions in Arena. The average Arena deck would be probably like 26, 27 minions. So if your opponent did this, you're basically skipping your turn. However, nowadays it's very common to have a whole lot of spells and also cards that generate other spells and spells that generate spells and all of that in card draw and all of this stuff. People have options way more than they used to. So if you do this, there's a decent chance, especially against a priest or something, it's just going to do literally nothing. However, having said that, you know, it'll have its moments, right? Overall, it's going to be one of those cards that you can imagine it's like a very aggressive Loatheb type card, or almost like a more aggressive Doomsayer, but sometimes it's just not going to work. So probably not a card you're going to be too wanting to draft. Maybe in an aggressive deck you might want one, but it's a little bit risky. So it's more of a card that maybe you would want to discover if you're already ahead and you think this will seal out the game, more than a card you actually want to draft. So that will move on to the next card here, which is a Death Knight card. Only Death Knight. It's Dead Air. Another 2 mana spell, requires both 1 Frost and 1 Unholy Rune. Card's text reads, destroy your undead and resummon them. So you can kind of imagine this is most of the time just going to be a much, much worse Unholy Frenzy. There are certain times where it might be better, but usually it's just going to be worse. Unholy Frenzy is a very good card, but it's it's still relatively conditional, and this one's a lot more conditional. Mainly with this, kind of like the next card we have here, which, not a mini set card, but an existing card, Mosh Pit. It's another card like this where it obviously has certain upsides, but you really need to have very specific cards to make it really worth it. Otherwise, it's just not going to get enough value. So overall, it's probably not going to be that hard because there aren't that many Death Knight cards, and you have relative consistency to hit a lot of those Death Rattles, Reborns type effects. But you know, it's risky. You probably just don't want to draft it unless you actually have the synergy already, and a lot more synergy than you will on average. But, you know, it definitely can work. So let's move on to the next card here. All of these are new, and speaking of synergies, this is one of the key cards you would actually want to use it with. This is Cool Ghoul. A 4 mana 3/1 undead with Divine Shield and Reborn. This is in both Death Knight and Paladin. So you can imagine this thing is just going to be impossible to kill, especially with Death Knight, where you have potentially things like Unholy Frenzy, like that new card as well, that can resummon it. If you, for example, get this thing 1 hit away from being completely dead, you know, if you've done 3 out of 4 pings on it, then your opponent can Unholy Frenzy it, and then it comes back all the way at full health. And it'll have Reborn again, and yeah, it's very, very annoying, because if you're not aware, like, if a Reborn Divine Shield comes back, it will still have Divine Shield. the second half also has Divine Shield. So this thing's just incredibly, incredibly annoying. It's just never going to die. Just pointed out by Card Hunting in chat. Yes, it is a common, so yeah, it's going to be all over the place. And I forgot that I actually moved the chat, so let me adjust you guys really fast to make sure you guys are over there. Okay, that's better. But yeah, this thing's going to be incredibly, incredibly annoying. In Paladin, it's probably going to be a lot less likely they have some synergy. There is some of the Divine Shield synergies you can use with it as well. But it's not going to be quite as annoying. But also, you can imagine, obviously it's not aggressively as good because it's only 3 damage, but this thing is the amount of Divine Shield value that, you know, Buffet Beacon is. It's just very, very annoying. It's just going to be a thing that a lot of times you're just going to have to ignore and just hope you don't get wrecked by it. Moving on to the next card here, it's Yelling Yodeler, another dual class card, this time for Death Knight and Hunter. 4 mana 3/4 Battle Cry, trigger a friendly minion's death rattle twice. Of course, Reborn is not a death rattle, they are different, so you can't use it, for example, with the previous card, but there are a fair number of death rattles in Death Knight specifically that are going to be worth comboing with this. It's still a rather risky card to draft, so 4 mana 3/4 is nowadays completely terrible. I mean, it always was. But of course, you don't need that much value to make it worth it. But the other thing to note is that specifically in Hunter, it's a little bit weird. Like, these are to give an idea, there's obviously neutrals, but like these are some of the Death Knight cards you can get. There's a lot of stuff, like even getting like 2 damage to an enemy, right, would probably be worth it. There's a lot of death rattles that are potentially going to be really good. This is the big one here. But in Hunter specifically, there really isn't a lot. Like, this is it. You have like High Main, and you can't even use it with Jungle Jammer. It has to be a minion. If it actually worked with Jungle Jammer, that would be potentially amazing, but it doesn't. So it's very bizarre, because in Hunter it really just doesn't work, besides just neutrals, and there aren't a lot of neutrals anymore. So in Hunter, this card I think is just terrible, but in Death Knight it definitely will have a place, and you'll want to pick it if you have the right synergy. So with that, we will move on to the next card. Are there any other cards? That is it for Death Knight. Oh, it didn't show this one. I can't do it that way then. It's gonna be tricky. Oh, that one just showed up afterwards for some reason. Anyway, okay. Thought there was one more, but there is one more for Death Knight. This one is also Death Knight and Hunter. It is Hollow Hound, a 6 mana 3/6 undead beast with lifesteal and rush. Also damages minions next to whomever this attacks. It's funny that I don't have that scene for the raid on this thing, even though the audio comes up. My OBS is really messed up with that, but in any case, thanks for the raid, Judge. We are doing a card review right now. So yeah, we will play Arena later a little bit. I have a broken Death Knight that I drafted the first week I need to do and stuff, but yeah, we'll do a little bit of that. But yeah, Hollow Hound, 6 mana 3/6 undead beast. This is, you can imagine, so this is in Hunter. Hunter has the 4 mana 3/5 rush cleave that is kind of similar to this. The big deal about this is that it has lifesteal. In addition, you obviously don't have to infuse it, but it has lifesteal. So if your opponent has 3 minions on board, and if they're aggroing you down, if they're not just a mage that's burning you from hand or something, if they have a lot of minions, each cleave, each minion you cleave is going to give you that lifesteal, so you will get potentially 9 health immediately out of this. So that is a lot of lifesteal, and if it survives, and they have to run a minion into it, you get even more. So the amount of lifesteal you get out of this thing is absolutely insane. I guess in Hunter, specifically in the mirror, you might care, otherwise you won't really care, but Death Knight is particularly, that's a really nice tool for them to have, in addition to a potential no muncher. Obviously, it probably wouldn't make sense for it to have runes, not being a pure Death Knight card, but it doesn't have runes, so this is available in tribes even if they don't have any blood runes. So it's a way for the non-blood Death Knights to get the healing comparable to a blood Death Knight, so that makes it potentially very, very useful there. So yeah, I think it's a solid card overall. Next up, we will move on to Demon Hunter. So Demon Hunter has a few cards here. Let me see. Oh, one thing to mention, by the way, we do have a giveaway going on, which is, if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll probably be still a few hours left, but it is in my Discord. I put an announcement in the community tab, and maybe I'll put it in the description of this video as well. Of course, on Twitch, you can use the giveaway command as well to see that. But yeah, so let's go to the Demon Hunter cards. First one we have here, don't see any yet. Here it is. There's one, Remixed Rhapsody. This is a 5 mana rare spell. Deal 3 damage to all minions, gains an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. So there are a handful of cards like this. I think all of them have 4 different modes, and you can see these are the different modes here. One of them is draw 3 cards. That is an insane amount of value. Another one is deal 3 damage to all minions twice, so it becomes a 6 damage AoE, which also deals with Divine Shields. In almost any case, that'll just be better than a 6 damage AoE. So incredibly powerful there. Next one is give your hero +5 attack each turn. Very nice to potentially, you could remove a minion. This would actually kill an 8/8, but also you might just be able to use as a finisher. Kill your opponent, obviously. And then the last one here is summon a 5/5 demon, so basically making this like a power crept Abyssal Enforcer as well. So yeah, and there's the Wailing Fanatic. So all of these modes are really good. Obviously in certain situations you're going to very much want ones over others, but yeah, in any case, there's something for everything, right? Even in a really aggressive deck, you can use this as 5 mana deal 5 at some point when it's not really board clearing yourself, or just to end the game. And yeah, it's just a really strong card. So it's one of those AoEs where I think even in aggro, you obviously wouldn't value it as highly, but you'd be pretty reasonable to just take it. So yeah, just a very strong card. You're gonna be seeing it a lot. You're gonna be picking a lot when you see it. It's a rare card, so it won't be too common, but you will value pretty highly. Next up, we have Abyssal Bassoon. This is a Demon Hunter and Warrior card. 7 mana 4/7 demon with taunt and lifesteal. Costs 2 less for each weapon you've equipped this game. So obviously it's a big annoying taunt with lifesteal, but at base cost it's a bit overpriced. You wouldn't really want it. However, it gets discounted very quickly. Just one discount and this goes to a 5 mana 4/7 with taunt lifesteal, and that is totally fair and probably pretty good already. And then of course Demon Hunter Warrior, I believe, are the 2 classes with by far the most weapons right now, and you're very likely to have multiple. You're very likely to have 1 weapon by turn 5, so you'll be able to play this often. But on top of that, you will pretty frequently have multiple weapons, and maybe you pass it on turn 5, so you can play it a little bit later for 3 mana or even 1 mana or 0 mana potentially. So I think in most decks it's going to be very good. Obviously, especially if you're a Demon Hunter and you just don't have the weapons, be a little careful about picking it too highly, but in most decks it should be pretty strong. So a very good card there. Next up we have Tough Crowd. 3 mana demon, which is in Demon Hunter, but also Rogue. So the first outcast card in Rogue. As it is a 3 mana 2/1 outcast, return a minion to its owner's hand. Of course, you can potentially use this to sap your own minion to cop a battle cry. However, most of the time, what you're going to want to do is use this as a sap for an enemy minion, which is effectively like a silence removal, except they get a copy out of their hand, into their hand. So we'll go to YouTube, yes. So overall, this is an effect that always gets underrated. You know, sap is, because I've seen a lot of people already compare it, say like, oh, it's terrible because it's worse than sap. I mean, sap was one of the best cards to ever exist. It got deleted from the game for being ridiculously OP, right? The fact that it's worse sap does not mean it's a bad card. So this is a very good card. It can potentially screw over Falaren, for example, because if you play Falaren on 4, you get this, you can't play it immediately. It might go into a slot, you can't outcast it. It makes it a little awkward, but overall you're going to be pretty happy to take this really in either Demon Hunter or Rogue. In those 2 classes, some of the more modern rogues, they do have a lot of value, so it might be very hard to outcast in Rogue specifically, and they have other removals, so you probably won't value it as highly, but especially in Demon Hunter, I think you're going to be really happy to take this. It should usually be a lot easier to outcast, and yeah. Especially in Demon Hunter, this is a super, super premium card, I think. Because of the Sunken Ear being super common, you probably just don't need to prioritize it as highly in Rogue, though. But yeah, still a good card. And next up, we have Rhythm Dancer Riza, or Riza. 5 mana 3/5 Rush. After your hero attacks, return this to your hand and set its cost to 1 as a legendary minion. So obviously the idea with this would be you can rush this once and then use your hero power, and then it goes back to your hand. It gets healed. You only have to spend 1 additional mana for it, and then you get to keep using it. So it's a mix of a lot of value there. Could be a little awkward sometimes because there are going to be times where maybe you want to push with it, but I guess you can always hit with your face first and then summon this and then stick it on the board if that's what you want. But a lot of times you'll just want to use this for value. Overall, I mean, it's like 1 mana deal 3, but you can't kill big things with it or else you lose it, so it seems reasonably fair. This is also, by the way, in Demon Hunter and Rogue. Feels a lot better in Rogue, I would say, because Rogue doesn't really have that much AoE, so this can kind of pseudo function as AoE. In Demon Hunter, this just doesn't seem all that useful, although with obviously the Rush package, you can see what you could do with it, but I feel like in Arena, that would be less valuable. It seems a lot more useful in Rogue. Overall, it's a decent card, but it's in the legendary slot, and you just frankly have a lot of better cards there, so I think you would usually get something better, especially in Rogue. But in Demon Hunter, you might take it a little bit more, because there's more synergy and all that. And the last card we have here for Demon Hunter, also a dual class card with Warrior, is Through Fel and Flames. Guitar Hero reference. Give a minion Rush, Finale, and +1/+1. It's a Fel spell for 0 mana. So, this is one of those cards where, especially if you're playing like a more defensive warrior, I see this being very useful because, you know, you just want to stay alive and you'd be willing to... You have a lot of value much more easily, most likely. You'd be willing to spend a card to do this. The big downside of this card is that it just doesn't actually do that much and it costs a card. So if you're not able to replenish your hand, it's really bad. You could also imagine it being good if you get some of that synergy in Demon Hunter with, you know, the whole package of shuffling stuff back into hand, outcast, and a whole bunch of card draw. If you have that whole package there. However, it'd be a lot more risky because if you just don't have enough of that value and synergy, it's going to burn you out of resources really fast in Demon Hunter specifically. And the same risk is there in Warrior as well if you just don't have enough value. So it's one of those cards that I think generally it'd be kind of nice to have like one of these, but you probably just don't want to fill your deck full of these because if you had 30 of these, they don't really do anything, right? So maybe a nice like one of card, but just not one you would probably prioritize super highly. So next up we have Druid. I'll take this point to mention as well, we do have a sponsorship. I did a sponsored stream yesterday for Raid Shadow Legends. If you go to my panel here and you click on this link, they will have there is this here, and if you do this here, oops, that is the wrong button, I should disappear here. You can use the QR code to download on mobile, or you can click here to download it for PC, and if we hit the goals, then it will really support the stream, so I'd really appreciate anyone doing that. But in any case, let's go back here. So now we have Druid. First one we have here, which is new, I do believe, is Popular Pixie. 2 mana 2/3, common bard. Choose one, refresh your hero power, or your next one costs 0. So it's kind of a dual purpose, right? You can either use it as a 0 mana ping, which makes it very, very nice. Kind of similar to how you would use, you know, the 2 mana 2/3 that would make all your characters have +1 attack. You would essentially use that for a free hero power as well. If you're using it early on, this one's better because you gain an armor, I guess. But, you know, the other main upside of this as well is that in the later game, if you do have some of those hero power buffs, then you actually get to use this to hero power twice. So you have like a 5 attack hero power, for example. You hero power, play this hero power again, and then you suddenly have a Pyroblast that you didn't even have to pay a card for. I mean, you kind of paid this, but yeah. So it's a pretty decent card in either case. 2 mana 2/3 with a free ping and an armor, I guess, is to mitigate the damage. You're not really gaining armor most of the time, but it's nice. And obviously, if you have that synergy, this card gets crazy good really fast. So overall, not a super premium card unless you have that synergy, but a decent card in any deck. So a very good 2-drop there. Next up, we have Blood Treant. This is an interesting card, a 5 mana 2/2 Treant. So it does have Treant synergy, but this one costs health instead of mana. And I have to say, like, in Modern Arena, like, you know, a 2/2 is only a 1 mana card, and probably not even, like, it's not even a great 1 mana card. So you're paying 5 health to get, like, 1 mana cheat at best. Like, and there's no real hand buff synergy. Like, there's no hand buffs really in Druid. So you're not gonna, like, get value there. So this just seems really not worth it for the most part. It is a low roll for Pack the House. That is true, yes. But yeah, because just in general, it's not. You'd rather just have a 1 mana 2/2, because the one case where you would really want this is if you had a deck that literally you were just complete hardcore aggro. You had like 12 1-drops or something. So you would. That's what you would want to do, is you would want to play this for free in addition to other 1-drops, and then dump more 1-drops, buff everything, and then kill your opponent on like turn 4. That's the idea of this. It's hyper aggro. But in a more normal looking deck, you just wouldn't want this. And in Warlock as well. Well, the idea in Warlock would be you would use this with ways to turn that damage into positive effects. But again, in Arena, just not going to work most of the time. So it's a card you're just going to wish it wasn't a common, because you'll see it more than you'll ever want to pick it, basically. Next up, we have Doomkin. 6 mana 3/4 Battle Cry. Take one of your opponent's empty mana crystals. That's very interesting. I'm assuming they'll still be able to, like, it's not a permanent take, right? They'll still be able to go up to 10, right? It's not like they literally go down to 9 maximum, do they? I actually don't know, because that would be interesting in a slower deck. But in any case, overall, like, this is a 6 mana 3/4, doesn't really do much. Just doesn't seem like something you would want, because the initial mana cost of it is a little bit too damaging, I think. So probably not what you would exactly want overall. I'm curious how other people, but I imagine other people will see the same thing for that one. It just seems a little bit too expensive for what you would actually want with it. But that one also is in both Warlock and Druid, and in either case, like, you know, in a slower Warlock and Arena, you're typically just trying to not die. And in Druid, you're trying to pull off more powerful plays, so it just doesn't seem like it would be what you would be looking for most of the time. Next up, we have Funnel Cake. 1 mana, Priest Druid card with Overheal. Restore 3 health to a minion and its neighbors. For each one overhealed, refresh a mana crystal. So it's one of those cards where, I mean, you can imagine this is like Circle of Healing in Priest, right? I guess it's better because it requires you to have a mana free, but that's usually not a problem. But then you potentially get mana cheat as well. So it's not, most of the time it's going to be at worst 0 mana, but oftentimes this will actually generate mana in both Druid and Priest. So you would be looking at it a lot for that effect here. This seems like just a card that really rewards you for actually being on board. So I do like this card a lot. I'll probably value this pretty highly, I think, actually, because there are real things you can do with that mana cheat. You can't actually cheat mana, it's refresh, so you would just be dumping like an extra 2 or 3 drop on the board, which is which definitely limits the impact of it, but especially in Druid. It seems like that would be really powerful in Druid specifically, to be able to, you know, that mana cheat can get you that AoE buff, that what's it called, Soul of the Forest, for example. That's what it seems like you would be really wanting to use this for, to get the mana cheat to do a good turn and then have that extra mana to play the Soul of the Forest to really establish the game. In Priest, it's probably just not something you would want as much most of the time, just the way priests play right now, I would think. But yeah, if you have overheal synergy, maybe. But yeah, overall, that's where I see that card there. So I think it's better in Druid than Priest there. Next up, we have Fanboy, also a Priest Druid, dual class card. 2 mana 2/2 with choose 1, give a friendly minion +2 attack and rush, or +2 health and lifesteal. First time I saw this, I thought it was just choose 1 for itself, and then I was like, wow, they're really power creeping vanilla, aren't they? But not exactly, because it requires you to have another friendly minion, which again makes it a lot better in Druid than Priest, you would imagine. However, in Priest especially, you would really like that health and lifesteal option if you get a minion to stick ever, and you can copy it, buff it, etc., and all of that stuff. So it still requires you to get a minion on the board though, and because it's not giving any attack buff with the lifesteal, it may not actually be that valuable overall. If it gave like lifesteal and taunt, that would probably be a lot better for Priest especially. But overall, I mean, it's a nice card for Druid just to have whatever effect you need. It's just not that much stats, but yeah, you would like that attack and rush more, I think. Overall, it just seems like a decent, fair card. Over basically, being able to use it off board for rush would be nice, but doesn't seem super crazy. Did I run out of Cole's t-shirts? I should add that for this one, shouldn't I? Huh. In any case, we will be moving on now to Hunter. Hunter, don't have any new cards here. The first one we have here is Hidden Meaning. This is a 2 mana secret. When your opponent ends their turn with no mana, summon a random 3-cost minion. So, honestly, if this was just, like, if there was a 2 mana spell that just summoned a random 3-cost minion, it wouldn't even be that good. This is this requires it to have a delay, which sometimes might be good, right? If you're getting like board cleared, for example, then this might, you know, it still acts at the end of their turn, right? So I guess you get initiative on the 3-cost minion, I do believe, right? So that could make it act somewhat as a finisher, but I don't know. It seems a little weird. Some of the value as well would just be in mind gaming your opponent, because you could bluff a freezing trap, for example, right? But there's going to be also other times where your opponent might figure out that this is what it is, or this is likely, and then they just don't let it summon ever, and then you're just kind of screwed. I do think it can attack melee. I'm assuming, I could be wrong though. Off of my read, I think it's at the end of the turn, so I think it would be. I think it can. That's one of the main upsides, that it could surprise finish somebody if they're not aware, especially early on. You might catch people with that, but yeah. And it triggers at the end of the turn, so it's never getting removed if it goes off. So that's the upside of it, mainly. But yeah, it seems okay. I would still rather have other secrets, I think. It's probably better than the secrets that actually require your opponent to attack you in the face, for example. I probably like it more than those. But yeah. And early on it's decent. It's just a potential low roll, but you play it early, your opponent's obviously going to have to trigger it. So, you know, I think it's pretty good. It's one of the better secrets for sure. But yeah. It's not saying much. But yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's decent. Next up we have Costume Singer. Some synergy with the last card, because this is 1 mana 2/1. At the end of your turn, draw a secret, and this is in Hunter and Mage. Mage doesn't have that much secret synergy right now, but they do have, I mean, they have the minion that casts Consecration, basically. That would be like the key upside for it. So it's just like a new way to draw your secrets that way. I don't usually advise going too much for secrets in Arena because it's just, they tend to underperform. But this is a nice card because this is at the end of your turn, first of all, so it's guaranteed to work. But if it doesn't die, it can trigger multiple times. It triggers at the end of each one of your turns. So if your opponent doesn't like coin a ping, for example, to kill it, then you get 2 draws if you actually have that many secrets. You're pretty likely to just straight up run out of secrets. So it's going to bait people into drafting way too many secrets. So it's going to be a little bit of a trap probably. But yeah, obviously, even if you're drawing bad cards, if you're drawing multiple cards basically for free, it's very good. So yeah, if you have the secrets, nice card, but you know, don't get too baited by it. The last card we have here, Star Power. This is also a Hunter and Mage card. Why does this remove so much damage? But this is like a bigger version of Shell Shot, right? Shell Shot was 3 mana, deal 3, then 2, then 1, and if you get spell damage, it scales exponentially with it, right? This one is the same way, except it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's just an insane removal card. The only downside of it is that, you know, I mean, it's mainly if your opponent has a bunch of 1 health minions, a bunch of 1/1s, for example. This just isn't going to be that efficient then. Potentially, you might waste damage on the 1/1s, and then it's just not going to be that good. But, I mean, more often than not, this is going to be... You can imagine this is going to be about as good as Don't Stand on the Fire, which is like 5 mana deal 10. This is going to be probably about that good most of the time anyway. And yeah, if you get any spell damage as well, then it's just, I mean, it's just going to kill everything no matter what's there. So very powerful. Yeah, good luck having a board, basically. It's just, because it does so much damage, 15 damage for 5 mana without spell damage, and potentially more. You can afford to waste half of it and it'll still be good, right? It's more of an issue of if your opponent can actually create enough of a board to actually make it effective. But yeah, it's a good problem to have for a removal card, right? So very powerful there. So with that, we move on to... Oh yeah, it is Arcane, so that's valuable for Hunter as well. The next up, we move on to Mage. Mage here, we have the first card is Remixed Dispensobot. 4 mana 4/4 mech, which gains an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. So the extra effects we have here, one of them is get 2 random frost spells. Mage spells are usually pretty good. There's some frost spells that aren't great, but I mean, you can get like Cold Case, you can get like something like Shatter, not Shatter, but the new Shatter. So it's possible to low roll kind of, but yeah. Getting 2 spells is usually really good. This one is get 2 random mechs. Mechs are not great, so this one seems significantly worse, but it's still a lot of value that you're not paying much for. Oh yeah, that's true. It could give you Frost Death Knight spells as well. It doesn't say Frost Mage spells. So it's a bit more low roll actually. But yeah, you can also get Shaman spells, and Shaman spells are really good. So yeah, this should be usually really good. And then this one is get 2 coins, so then that just makes this a 2 mana 4/4. You probably want value more, but obviously if you just want tempo, this is great. And then the last one here is this one, which is get 2 random mage secrets. And that's probably the worst option most of the time, right? Because you still have to play them, right? So yeah, that just makes it like slow. It's still a lot of value, but it's just annoying, right? You have to pay. It's just slow compared to the other options. So I think that's the worst one. But overall, I mean, these are all really good. It's a lot of value, or tempo if you really want tempo. But most of the time, you're just going to get a lot of value of this card. So it seems very good. It does say Mage Secrets, so you can't get Freezing Trap. But yeah. Overall, like, the only downside of this is that it is in Mage, and you just have other ways to get value. But especially getting Frost spells from Shaman, like the way to copy your opponent's minion, that seems very good. So overall, I think this is a card that you would like to have. It's just a value option in Mage, but yeah, just not super premium, I don't think. Next up we have, because there is a risk if you really want that value, you just don't get the right one, and then it's a little weird. But you also might get a Gaia if you pick mech, so yeah. Next up you have Fiddlefire Imp. This is a 3-mana 3/2 demon common. Battle cry, add a random fire mage and fire warlock spell to your hand. Let's check exactly what there is here for those spells, because there are not that many of them, I don't believe. In Mage, you have Flame Geyser, Volcanomancy, Explosive Runes. Can I get this thing going? Flame Geyser, Volcanomancy, Explosive Runes, Fire Sail, Fireball, Fireless Pour, Power Blast. Not amazing ones there, but none of them are bad, right? Just sometimes you might not want the AoEs, but decent cards there. Nothing crazy. And in Warlock, you have Arson Accusation, Hellfire, and Immolate. Arson Accusation you might have to ping yourself to activate, but Immolate is a low roll, and Hellfire obviously is conditional as well. So, especially in Mage, that's probably weaker, because again, you probably just have better ways to generate value. But I mean, if you want fire spells, obviously you might want it, but it just seems like it seems weaker in Mage because of that. It's harder to trigger the Arson Accusation, and you have to ping yourself rather than life tapping, which is more convenient. But yeah, in Warlock, you'd probably be more happy to take this just to get those, just to unlock those fire mage spells to get potential value. It sucks that Immolate has to be in a card, because that definitely makes this a lot worse than it would be otherwise. But yeah, overall, especially in Warlock, I think that'll be nice. I think in Mage, you're just going to have other value that you would prioritize higher. But it's an alright card, even in Mage, nonetheless. Next up, we have Reverberations. 3-mana shadow spell. Summon a copy of a minion. Each one dies after taking damage. So, it's a weird one. You can imagine it's like, there's a lot of things you can do with this, I guess. I mean, it's basically an assassinate, but you get like a 1 health copy of something. You can use this on a colossal, for example. That's a pretty significant use case for it. Any other like Death Rattle minion as well, you're going to get value out of it. And this is also in Mage and Warlock. Most of the time, I'm sure there will be certain edge cases we use on your own minion, but the idea would be that you would use it on an enemy minion most of the time. You can use it on your own minion if you have like a silence, for example, but you'd need to silence both copies. So it's a little weird. Most of the time you're using it basically as an assassinate, right? And yeah, it punishes Stoneborn General. That is true, because yeah, this just completely kills off a Stoneborn General, for example. Yeah. That would be a really good use case for it. Overall, especially in Mage, it definitely seems like you'd be happy to use this most of the time. In Warlock, it just would be a bit more difficult to actually use, I would think. So not quite as good. I'm trouble thinking about like exactly how good that would be for Warlock though. I guess Warlock has ways to ping normally anyway, so it wouldn't be too hard to use it, but it definitely seems worse. It seems a lot better in Mage. But I think it would even be playable in Warlock. Sometimes in Warlock you just don't have ways to kill things, and you might be willing to take this for that reason. But yeah. And value it higher in Mage. With that, we move on to Paladin. Next up we have, so here we have Dance Floor. 2 mana location with 2 charges. Text reads, give your minions rush. So you can just play this on 2. Yeah, Broom was a good card. Broom gave you a 1/1, which was very significant to be able to clear Divine Shields and stuff. This one doesn't do that, but you get 2 Brooms for 1 card. Seems very, very nice. You'd be pretty happy to just play this on 2, and then, you know, you'll have something if you ever infuse a Buffet Big and give it rush or something. There's a lot you can do with this, right? Because combining this with Paladin specifically, with all the Divine Shields and life steals and stuff you can have, Just very, very nice. So very, very useful card. You're gonna love to take this. You might not want too many of them. There's probably a limit to how many you would actually want to draft. That would be the one thing. It's a common location, so you should see it a lot, but it's one of those things you would love to have. So rate it pretty highly. It's just that in Paladin you have so many good cards. I don't think you would take it over a lot of the other premium Paladin cards, especially because you're just likely to see more of them. But it's obviously a card you want in Paladin, because Paladin has issues just being able to interact with the game state. So, especially the first one, I think you value pretty high. But yeah. Next up, we have Jukebox Totem. This is a Paladin and Shaman card. 2 mana 0/4 mech totem. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Silverhand recruit. So Shaman had a 2 mana 0/3, which summoned a 1/1 Murloc at end of turn. And that card was always really underrated. It was actually one of the better cards in the Shaman period. This is effectively a power corrupt version. However, you're summoning a Silverhand recruit instead of a Murloc. Shaman obviously had some Murloc synergy, which didn't usually matter that much. But in Paladin, it matters a lot more with Silverhand recruit synergy potentially. You play this on 2, your opponent is never killing it because it has 4 health. How can they even kill it? It's probably just never going to happen. And they might kill the 1/1 though. But if the 1/1 doesn't die, then you can curve straight into the Warhorse Trainer to get a 3/1 rush out of it. And then, yeah, this is going to be game ending, actually. So this is good, right? Obviously, it's a lot better. It's one of those cards. I don't know why they love these types of cards so much, but they love these cards that just win you the game if you play them on turn 1 or turn 2. But later on, it's obviously not as valuable because it just won't do that much. But yeah. It's a good card just because, like, especially like coined on 1, like it's actually gonna win the game by itself fairly often in Paladin specifically. In Shaman, you would probably not value it quite as highly unless you really had certain synergies for going super wide. But yeah, or totem synergy, whatever. But yeah, in Paladin, you'd be pretty happy to take a couple of these. Just be very useful. Next up, we have, oh yeah, the last card for Paladin and Shaman, and I think easily the best card of the whole mini set. Horn of the Windlord, 6 mana 3/4 Wind Fury weapon in both Paladin and Shaman. Wind Fury, whenever your hero attacks a minion, set its stats to 3/3. So obviously there is the downside that you can't really use this, or you wouldn't really want to use this to clean up little stuff. But I mean, this is 4 assassinates for 6 mana. But in addition to that, it's also 12 damage for 6 mana if you just want to go face, right? Like, there's no situation other than just your opponent happening to have a board full of 1/1s. There's no other situation where this card's actually bad. It'll make Taunt Totem really annoying against you. And Annoyatron makes it the best card in the game. But yeah, that's probably more accurate. You can imagine that it's 4 obliterates in one, because I mean it literally is obliterate, sets their stats to 3/3. Be a little bit careful if they have like a taunt and a Stormwind champion, because that will make it a 4/4. So be careful about that one. But other than that, yeah, it's obliterate. Yeah, it's just, I mean, you would draft. There's no limit to how many you would draft, like 6 of these, just because it's so ridiculous, right? Because at a certain point, you just kill all their minions and then you just start going face with them. And it deals 6 damage per turn because it has Wind Fury, so your opponent just dies in a couple turns. So, yeah, good luck ever beating this card. Next, well, it's more reason to play aggro. Aggro is the answer. Next up, we have Deafen. 1 mana, Priest and Rogue Shadow spell, common as well. Silence a minion, and combo also deal 2 damage to it. So you're probably not that often going to use both. I mean, as long as you can combo this, it's a better Earth Shock, right? It's not super amazing. Obviously, if you're just using it as a worse Holy Smite, it's not super amazing if you're just using it as a silence mostly, but if you're getting both effects, it's pretty nice. Overall, in Rogue, it feels like, I guess if you have a lot of value in Rogue, you can afford this, but it might just be a little bit unimpactful for a card. You have this combo synergy, so it might be reasonable, but it feels like it often just won't do quite enough for Rogue. You would just have better options. However, in Priest, because you just tend to have a whole lot of value, it's another thing where it's like, it's fine. You can definitely afford to take this more often in Priest, I think, just because if you don't have silence, you have so many other ways to silence things too that you might just not need to take this. But, you know, it's a nice defensive card. It's useful, right? It's just not like something you would prioritize super highly, I think, in either class. It's fine. You'll take it sometimes. You won't take it other times. Next up, we have Plagiarizer. Priest and Rogue were not toxic enough. 3 mana 4/3, Pirate in both of those two classes. Battlecry. Get a copy of the top card of your opponent's deck. So sometimes, well, it's effectively a random card unless your opponent, first of all, it gives you information. Couple upsides. First of all, it gives you information, so you know what their card is. So that's valuable. But on top of that, if your opponent ever dredges, but if they put something you might actually want, and then they dredge it up, then you get it too. So that sunken, like for example, that sunken weapon you see pretty often in Warrior now, like you can steal something like that. And Priest with that sunken weapon, oh my god. Yeah, but there's other things you can steal as well. And just in general, anytime your opponent does their first dredge, they'll pull up something good, so you'll be able to take it, right? Yeah, insanely powerful. 3 mana 4/3s I don't like, but I mean the effect is huge, right? So you'll take every single one of these. It's just one of those cards, right? Unless it's against like Harmonic Pop or something. But in general, yeah, you should take it over everything. Next up, Ambient Lightspawn. 4 mana 3/4 elemental, common, in Priest, Finale, and Overheal. Give another random friendly minion +2/+2. So it's a little weird because it requires you to have a board as Priest, which isn't always easy, but if you're a Tempo Priest, I mean this card's insane, right? It's a 4 mana 5/6 with some initiative, if you can play it on curve. Active, right? So which is insane. If you play like a high health minion, like a 2/5 on turn 3, for example, and then you buff this, it's insane value. It's immediate value. But as well, you have that potential to also overheal it. If you had that new card, the Funnel Cake, like, that could be pretty useful. But yeah. Obviously more of a card you want in a Tempo Priest. So if you're playing like a really greedy Priest, you probably just wouldn't want this super highly. But yeah, in a Tempo Priest, very powerful. And that is it for Priest. Since we've shown a lot of the dual class cards, probably all of them by now, close to all of them maybe, then we're going to be seeing less cards per class now. But yeah. Next up we have Rogue. Rogue, we saw a lot of dual class cards already. So first one we have here is One Hit Wonder. 2 mana 2/1 undead, which always has rush, but also has the effect combo, gain poisonous. Sometimes you might use this as an overpriced rush on turn 2 if you really want to kill something. But, I mean, most of the time, you're just going to save this to play a 2 mana assassinate, which by the time you actually want to assassinate something, comboing this is probably no problem at all. So, it's also, it seems like a pretty good card, because it's basically just 2 mana assassinate. And in addition to that, this buffs all of the other, synergy cards that there are that give you random combo cards and stuff, because yeah, all of those become very good too. So yeah, very strong. Because the some of those conditional like 2 mana assassinates are pretty good, and this is probably the easiest condition to meet, just comboing a 2-drop, like super easy, right? So yeah, this goes on to the list of good luck ever getting a board in this new meta. Yeah, but that is actually it, because we've seen a bunch of dual class cards, so that is the only one for Rogue. Next up, we have Shaman. They really have a whole lot of dual class cards, seems like. The whole mini set is like almost all dual class cards. Next up, we have Remixed Totem Carver. Shaman spell, rare. 3 mana, 3/2, gains an extra effect to your hand that changes each turn. What are these effects here? So, first one is summon a Stereo Totem. Second one is summon a Manatide Totem. Third one is summon a Flame Tongue Totem. Fourth one is summon a Jukebox Totem. So this is kind of like it's like a reprint of that card, which has a very similar artwork, where you would summon a random totem, which they eventually nerfed to make a basic totem. But this one is you get to choose. I mean, you get to choose kind of, because it's random, but you can play it whenever you want. But yeah, in any case, you're getting way too much out of this, right? What is it like? In the worst case, you're getting for 3 mana a 3/2 and a 2 mana totem, right? Either a Flame Tongue or a Stereo Totem. But you can also get, yeah, a Manatide or a Jukebox Totem. So in general, you're just getting way too much for 3 mana. You're just not always going to get the exact one. Yeah, Tuskar Totemic, that is it. The old card. Yeah, you're getting too much out of these, because obviously all of these cards in the right situation are insanely good. Jukebox Totem and Stereo Totem if they just don't die. Also Flame Tongue if it doesn't die, but you get the initiative of Flame Tongue, and if Manatide doesn't die, you just win. So yeah, you don't get Totem Golem, so that's the one thing. You used to be able to get Tuskar Totemic into Totem Golem, but you can't get that one off of this one. Tragically. They didn't want to just make it like pure stats. But yeah, it seems very, very strong. It's just always going to be a use for that. Any of those on turn 3, right, you'll be pretty happy to just... This is what you're probably going to do if you have the option, is just slam it on turn 3, and then there's really no bad one, right? They're all really good, and it's too much for your opponent to clear, and it's going to be really annoying. Next up, we have Jam Session. There are 2 Shaman Warrior dual class spells here. First, this one is a 2 mana fire spell. Give a friendly minion +3/+3. Deal 1 damage to all other minions with overload 1. The one potentially awkward thing is, I mean, it's an AoE, it does require you to actually have a minion, which could be slightly awkward sometimes, but I mean, it's usually not that big of a problem. Because especially, it doesn't even like injure the minion you're buffing. It hits all other minions. So you're just getting 2 mana +3/+3. I mean, that would like 2 mana +3/+3 would already be a very good card, right? It overloads, so I mean, I guess it's 3 mana, but you're also getting a Whirlwind, which you know, you obviously might want as well. Yeah, there's very much potential for this to work in Warrior. With the Enrage package, you get an Imbued Axe, and then you just play this with another minion on 4 or whatever. Like, yeah, just seems very, very strong. And in Shaman, I mean, you might even be able to have like a healing totem to undo the damage if you have a board, so even aggressively it'd still be potentially good. So yeah, everyone get in here. Yeah, Grim Patron as well. I guess if there is a Grim Patron Warrior in Wild, they probably will run this. Kind of funny. But yeah, very, very good. Talking about very, very good, the other card, which is... Wait, wasn't there another dual class card? There was... Oh yeah. Look at this one first. So Backstage Bouncer first. This is a 4 mana 4/5 beast in both Shaman and Warrior. Also has Taunt, and also has Battle Cry. Transform a friendly minion into a copy of this. So for example, in Shaman, you could always play this on turn 6 with Hero Power, and then you have 2 4/5 taunts for 6 mana. That's like the worst case scenario, right? That's a lot of taunt. Obviously the ideal case would be you just have some other smaller minion, maybe a Silverhand Recruit that you got off the other totem, and then you just transform that into a 4/5, so you get basically a Blessing of Kings almost without initiative. In addition to a 4 mana 4/5 taunt. It's just an insane amount of stats. That should make this insanely good in Shaman. In Warrior, it's going to be slightly more difficult to make it work because it's going to be harder to, you know, you don't have as many small minions a lot of the time, but you can obviously draft 1 or 2 drops to do the same thing. But in addition to that, in Warrior, you also have hand buffs, and this is hand buff synergy. It transforms into a copy of this, so you buff this up with your anima extractors, your any other way. There's so many different ways to hand buff in Warrior now, and then you're getting ogres or even bigger out of this. You get like, you know, you could easily get like 15 mana worth of stats out of this. Like, it's very good. And again, the worst case scenario is it's just a Yeti with taunt on curve, but you would rather not use it because you can probably get it to be much better. So yeah, crazy good card. Next up, we have the Warlock cards here. Let's see what we got. The first one we have is looks like we only have the new card, the Legendary. I think Dirge of Despair, this was an existing card, right? I do believe so. We have Fanotum, Lord of the Opera, a 30 mana, 15/15 with Taunt and Lifesteal. This card's cost is equal to the amount of cards in your deck. So, there's some way you can do like a OTK with this. There must be somehow. But yeah, in any case, this is a weird one. There isn't, usually don't have that much card draw, like actual card draw in Warlock right now. And you know, you play with those a lot of us played with those cards that required you to get down to 10 cards in Warlock, and that was a hard condition to meet. It was reasonably hard most of the time. If you did have this, you would really want to actually draft like real card draw in Warlock, which you typically just don't want to. Obviously, if you get this down on the board and it doesn't get hard removed, you win, but it's like Thaddeus or something, right? But a lot of the times it might just get removed, and then there's so many assassinates that have almost no cost. At least if Rogue uses that Rush Poison to kill this for 2 mana, then at least you heal for 15. So, I mean, you get that going for you. But it's probably just not a card you would want to draft super highly. Because it's just, it's a big minion. You're going to play it like really late for like your entire turn, and then if it dies, you'll lose. If your opponent has a removal for it, which they often will if you're getting to that point in the game. It's going to come too late to really save you against aggro, like ever. So, yeah, probably not really going to work too much. But it'll have its moments, maybe. If you generate it randomly in some other class somehow, it'd be hard because it doesn't have any tribe or anything, but, you know, maybe. Oh yeah, Fires is in Ashari, because that's what you want. You want to just get it later on once you played Fires already. But yeah, seems like it wouldn't be a great card to draft. Next up, we have the Warrior cards. This might be the last one then, maybe? I'm not sure. We'll check, but this is Remixed Tuning Fork. 2 mana 2/2 weapon, which gains an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. First one we have here is Sharpened Tuning Fork. 2 mana 2/2 weapon. Its Battle Cry gains +2 attack. I was told that I believe it makes it a 4/2 weapon, right? Someone told me they thought it was buffing your face, so it was only the first turn, but I think it just gains attack on the weapon. So I think it's just a 4/2 weapon, but I could be wrong. This other one is gain 5 armor. The other one is also damages minions attack adjacent, so cleave. And the other one is discover a taunt minion. So there's no form which is bad, right? The cleave is the one that's particularly scary because, you know, particularly you would combo this with, I can't do it this way, but you know, the specific combo is with Verse Riff right here. You know, you're able to buff your hero, and then this becomes not a 2 mana cleave, but a 4 damage cleave, right? The other thing is, I mean, you can also, there's other ways to upgrade your weapon as well to make it like a 3/3 and stuff. So that cleave particularly seems very good, but also just having like a 4/2 weapon for 2 mana is also really, really good. You're asking about if you get that off fires. I think it still says it's text, so it would still go to whatever is based off of your deck. I don't think it goes to 5. It says it will be, your cost will be whatever your deck is, so the 30 is cosmetic basically. But yeah, that cleave is particularly scary, but in any case, like, you know, none of these modes are, I guess, like, he usually wouldn't want the armor, but any of these other modes are really, really strong, and the cleave is particularly scary, so you might just hold on to this in Warrior and hope that you find that cleave when you want it. But yeah. Alright. It's a +2 attack only for 1 turn. I don't think so, but I was asking. I don't actually know. In any case, it's good either way, but I think it's for 2 turns. Because it doesn't say give your hero +2 attack. It says gain +2 attacks, which I think goes to the weapon. But I actually don't 100% know. It's really good either way. But in any case, yep, that is it for the card review. Of course, as I mentioned, I already covered the neutral cards. I'll try to find them just to give like a very brief one, but of course you can go to the link in hopefully the card in the top right to see this. But as a short thing, Remixed Musician is really good. It's a good common card for any deck. Grimtone Buzzkill, weapon synergy, much better in good decks than others. In weapon decks than others, because you'd be happy to discard a weapon most of the time. Speaker Stomper, kind of a finisher card, good for a lot of decks. Elite Torn Champion, a complete meme. And Magatha, Bane of Music. Magatha, by the way, if you buy the if you buy the Golden Mini set for gold or money, that is the diamond card you will get. So, yeah. Unfortunately, usually too risky to actually put in an arena deck. You'd more of a card you'd want to build around and construct it. But yep, that is it for this. As a reminder, again, we have the raid promotion going on, which you can do, which is, there's the link in the Twitch description here. You have until through Sunday sometime to finish and help me out with that. It really supports the stream, but also we have a giveaway in the Discord, which, let me pull this up. We have this giveaway for 2 free mini sets. So if you go to my Discord here, you'll be able to join us. We have 4 entries right now. There are 2 mini sets being given away. So make sure to sign up if you are interested for that. But in any case, yeah, appreciate everyone hanging out. See you guys in the next one. Bye-bye, YouTube.